Trade rumors have begun to escalate in Pittsburgh as the Pittsburgh Steelers have a massive trade on the horizon. My name is Peyton Kleppe, and on today's episode of Steelers Digest, we'll be diving into the latest Pittsburgh Steelers news regarding their wide receiver position and whether or not they want to move on from their guys this offseason. Before we get into the latest reports, if you guys are not currently subscribed, just real quick, click that subscribe button down below. 91% of our current viewers are not already subscribed. Click that subscribe button. We're going to get you guys the latest Pittsburgh Steelers news every single day regarding Pittsburgh Steelers analysis, trade rumors, Pittsburgh Steelers signings, anything regarding our Pittsburgh Steelers. We're going to make a video to you guys daily. Let's get right into the latest news. So a guy that has been he's been a name of controversy since he's gotten in the league, George Pickens, our wide receiver number one. There's been some more news surrounding him the past couple days. There's been a lot of different rumors surrounding him, especially now that we have DK Metcalf at the wide receiver position and we have compensated him so well. George Pickens is looking like the odd man out, and especially due to his, all his antics, he could look to be on the move this offseason. Pittsburgh Steelers, once again, they're facing the same situation. They go 9-8, and they got a big choice to make this offseason. Whether or not they want to move on from George Pickens. The team has moved on from wide receivers in the past. They've really not bowed down to any receiver ever. I mean, Hines Ward was the last guy that the Pittsburgh Steelers really treated pretty well throughout his whole career and didn't move on from him. Everybody else is pretty much come and gone for us in the wide receiver room. It starts back, Emmanuel Sanders left for the Broncos. AB obviously left for the Raiders. Who else? Deontay Johnson, we traded him for Dante Jackson. Chase Claypool, we traded him for the Bears. Martavis Bryant, we traded him on draft day for a second-round pick. So, the Pittsburgh Steelers could look to do the same with George Pickens, and according to a team source, the Steelers are likely to move on from Pickens this offseason with the idea of completely reshaping their wide receiver room after a dreadful 2024 campaign and the expectations that Justin Fields or a new option may be taking over at quarterback. Pittsburgh is looking for a new group of wide receivers for the offense. And George Pickens could be that odd man out the Steelers look to move on from. Right now, he definitely has a lot of trade value, a lot of value at his position. This guy has only become, a superstar in his position the last couple of years. Obviously, last year he dealt with some hamstring injuries at the end of the year, and he really missed like 3 or 4 games, so his production definitely did go down. He did not finish the season with over 1,000 yards. He only had 900 and I believe only like 3 touchdowns. So this guy is a very talented wide receiver. He's a very talented wide receiver, but he's not one of the top 5, top 10 wide receivers in the league, especially now the NFL has become a league where you can get a wide receiver kind of anywhere in the draft. Like I said, I was talking about AB. We got him in the 6th round. George Pickens, we got him in the 2nd round. He was a steal, And the Pittsburgh Steelers have become better and better at drafting wide receivers in the past couple years. And I don't expect them to get better, We've only just spawned in new and better wide receivers each and every year. So it's really great to see the wide receiver room only getting better with DK Metcalf. But it is sad to see that George Pickens may be on the move. A guy who's really spoken up about George Pickens and the controversy surrounding the Pittsburgh Steelers is former Steelers legend Mel Blount. This former cornerback was on Ben Roethlisberger's Footballing with Ben podcast the other day, and he had some big comments that he made about the Pittsburgh Steelers that you don't usually see from a guy like Mel Blount, who usually he only has positive things to say about Coach T and the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, Mel Blount said that you need people who can look at the situation and then put somebody else before themselves. And he's probably talking about George Pickens. In this quote, Pickens' attitude is the main reason why he probably won't get extended by the Pittsburgh Steelers. Other than his production on the field, this guy has really been a nuisance in the locker room. Every game, he's making some dumb comment about him or his team, or he's throwing his helmet on the sidelines, or he's screaming and yelling at his coach or his quarterback. So, George Pickens has really dug himself a deep hole that it's going to be tough to get out of. And, some teams that he could be linked to are, the Raiders or Tennessee, as the Pittsburgh Steelers look to trade George Pickens. Another option the Pittsburgh Steelers could look to do with George Pickens is, Ray Filipaldo reported that I don't think Jackson Dart or Shedeur Sanders is going to happen. But it's pretty much down to receiver or D-line. I think the only way a receiver is in play at 21 is if they turn around and trade George Pickens on draft day. So I think that's a possibility. And the Pittsburgh Steelers are not strangers to doing this. In the past, they've done the same thing with another guy who was their number 2 star receiver. And a lot of fans really liked him, and it was tough to see him go. But in the end, it worked out for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I'm talking about with Martavis Bryant. Pittsburgh Steelers moved on from him in, I believe, 2018 or 2017. Actually, 2017. They traded him in the draft, and they ended up drafting Juju Smith-Schuster, who was, he ended up playing better than Martavis Bryant, and he's had a better career overall than Martavis Bryant. So the Pittsburgh Steelers could trade George Pickens in this year's draft if they found somebody in the top couple picks that they really want, whether that is Jackson Dart, Shadur Sanders, Ime Ibuka, Ashton Jeanty. There's a lot of different players that the Steelers could look to trade up for in this draft because they definitely have a lot of missing holes on their roster they need to fill, specifically at that quarterback and that wide receiver position. George Pickens, he's been great for us, but I think it's time for us Steelers fans to move on. We've had, like I said, we've had so many talented receivers in the past, and George Pickens, he's really a freak of nature. He's really on his own wavelength. He's on his own level, but the Pittsburgh Steelers cannot be dealing with these diva wide receivers anymore, and especially bringing in like a guy like DK, who's probably going to have some personality. I don't know how Coach Tomlin's going to control George Pickens and DK. The only thing is, now that we acquired DK, it may potentially have the Steelers hold back on trading George Pickens because they do want to see the two in action for at least a year. But I don't think this changes the Pittsburgh Steelers' plans long term. I think if the Pittsburgh Steelers, even next year mid-season, if they decide that, hey, we don't want to pay George Pickens, he's not worth the long-term money, he is not worth the cancer in our locker room, they could look to trade him in the middle of next year. Who knows? The Pittsburgh Steelers, the con artist, has really kept his cards close to himself, and he really does not reveal any of his moves before he makes them. So it could be something that the Pittsburgh Steelers look to do before the draft, during the draft, or during the season next year. But I really think the Pittsburgh Steelers have set their sights on moving on from George Pickens, and I think that started with the payment of DK Metcalf and also acquiring him in a trade for their second-round pick. A second-round pick is not something you just give up for anybody. The Bears gave up a second-round pick for Chase Claypool, and we used that for Joey Porter Jr., but that is the Bears. We are the Pittsburgh Steelers. We are a much better franchise, and we do not trade our second or first-round pick for just anybody. The last time we traded our first-round, second-round pick up, we got Minkah Fitzpatrick, and that was a great trade. I think DK Metcalf is going to be a great trade as well, but George Pickens, I don't think you will be in Pittsburgh for the long run. I am sorry to say that. That is all I have for you guys today on Steelers Digest. If you guys have not clicked that subscribe button down below already, click it now. Thank you so much. Go Steelers. Peace out, boys.